welcome back. Well, those two gentlemen, I mean, one is here with us, but Honorable Dennis Agbo should be able to join up sooner rather than later, we expect. Well, here in the studios, we've got Honorable Uzoma and Kema Bonta, who was a member of the 9th Assembly. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Vias.
Well, today, essentially, as we heard the Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, say that they will be meeting today to work out implementation. So that is there. So he's listed some of those demands. But before we just delve into that, could you just give us your impression about, because we started up with this narrative that was made by Senator Adamu Bokochowa on the floor of the Senate, and how he's come back and said, well, the Senate president didn't allow him finish, and so many are taking his statement out of context. And then that led to questions about legislative immunity. What does it mean? What could happen? So when you heard that narrative, what were your impressions?
Oh, well, it is most unfair and not just for a legislator to begin to talk about judicial procedures or he influenced or did not or otherwise. It shouldn't be a discussion, in fact. That's absolutely wrong. All the same, he needs to explain to Nigerians what he meant and complete his statement. But judicial process shouldn't be influenced. It shouldn't be sold, shouldn't be discussed. In fact, he ought not to discuss even that with his spouse and whatever. It's very, very wrong. It's absolutely wrong.
In other words, is it excusable? He's recanting.
Until we know the details of what he meant, but from the prima facie evidence, like lawyer will say, he should not have discussed that at all. So we're wondering,
what does the legislative immunity component, what does that mean in this regard?
I don't think that is part of legislative assignment. I don't think, will he claim he uttered that, even though at the floor of the House or Senate, he's protected to some extent, but what he was canvassing, was it a legislative assignment duty? If he had gone outside the legislative ambit, why should immunity protect him? If, for example, we are to discuss a legislative issue, a debate, you veer out entirely that is not related to it and begin to say that, I think it's wrong.
So in that regard, that immunity doesn't apply to him since that was out of context in terms of...
It was out of context. I don't think he should get absolute benefit of that immunity. He still will offer explanation, and they have their ethics and privilege committee that should look at it, and it should be subject to the ethics and privilege to determine the effects of the damaging or otherwise of those statements. I mean, people will believe, in fact, already people believe that what he said or what he tried to say, even though he didn't conclude, according to him, that it goes a long way. You know what, husband and wife? And then the wife decides, and you come to tell public, oh, you made your wife do so things. I want to believe so. Those who are calling that the wife should be sanctioned, no, we've not heard from her. Maybe he was being exuberantly talking out of point or so, or trying to show that the wife had a capacity or to occupy or do that. But it's absolutely wrong in totality. It shouldn't be a discussion at all.
Oh, exuberance at 33?
83.
Sorry, 83. Exuberance at 83?
You can have not only youthful exuberance, you can have elderly exuberance or what.
Okay. All right.
I never heard that before.
Yeah. All right.
Or legislative exuberance, or whichever one you want to put it. But it's absolutely wrong.
Oh,
okay,
dear.
but back to this subsidy matter. Since the Chief of Staff, I just give a former speaker, at least, well, he did say they'll be meeting today to continue that deliberations. And then, I mean, our guests have spoken about, yes, it's one thing to have all of these agreements, as fine as they may appear on paper, but the system, he talked about, the last guest, implementation, may not be as exuberant as we expect. You have been in the House, you know about oversight functions, you've seen those agencies and how they function. Should we be optimistic or cautious or what about how they will proceed from here?
Yes, I think our problem, like you said now, is implementation and carrying out to a desired result. I also want to thank the president now for having the political will to take away the subsidy. And I also think if he allows that political will to trickle down the House, if they have the political will, they'll do the needful in terms of their oversight and allowing the agencies to do their functions. But if tall orders will begin to come, then we'll be in the same problem. We'll be running around the circle. We've had in the past programs designed to cushion the effect of certain hardship, but they failed. They failed because of implementation. I'll give you an example. Trillions of money went on feeding the school, money trade, money does, and so on. They ended up not being properly done. And when the House dealt into some of those things, tall orders will come say, stop this, stop there. I agree with Baja Nila that if proper supervision, if the House agrees, if they have the will, they'll get that. The present speaker is a very intelligent young man. I want to believe that if he can possess the political will, then to do the needful, then we'll get there.
That's a very damning revelation you've just made in terms of people trying to encroach on the independence of the legislature, you know, asking them to stop investigation on certain things, such as school feeding program. In fact, when you started this talk of palliative, I thought you were referring to Shopee and all that, because that was directly related to an initial attempt of governments to remove subsidy. But if you're talking about the social investment programs and the fact that, you know, you were not, as members of the 9th Assembly, were prevented from, you know, seeing the effectiveness of these schemes by people who were not members of Parliament, then there are big questions as to the independence of the legislature.
Thank you very much. You're not new in Nigeria. You've been used to this discourse. We're talking about palliative that will cushion the effect of subsidy removal, ranging from Shopee and social investment. These are palliatives that will be able to do that. The 9th Assembly did a lot of investigation to expose a lot of things. And I mean, there's also political interference every time anywhere by a party. So you must also sympathize those on those presiding seats. It's not easy. Today, we have been hearing that social amount had gone to school feeding. And they are staggering. Until issues came now with CBN and all what, we are hearing those revelations. So I'm saying that palliatives, in whatever name you call it, to cushion the effect of subsidy should be encouraged, should be supervised properly, should be well made in a manner that the desired impact as tailored will come. There's no point sewing clothes that won't fit us in. So we need to measure it to fit us in. That's what I'm just saying. So Shopee, how far did it work? So when they're saying now they're going to collaborate with the state governments, I agree. Because the state part must be supervised and agreed and function in line with the thinking of the federal government. The House will have a big role to do in terms of their oversight functions, in terms of enabling legislation that will guide that. So Mr. President will also be quick and needful to assent to laws when sent to him. The House should also be ready, having the political will to do the needful. Some people are blaming Mr. President that he was too hasty, too quick to do the removal. No, I agree. If he had started unnecessary consultation, he will have lost the political will. He will have lost the political will. So he took the right step in the right direction.
For that subsidy, right?
For that subsidy, yes.
But what about the other policies as well?
That's what I'm saying now. In the other policies now, he must consult. He must put it down. Having done that, it's like doing a surgery on appendicitis. You don't have to do so because then you apply the anesthesia and you cut the thing.
But if you're going to consult, wouldn't you be losing time while the effect of subsidy linger?
There are immediate and long-term effects or to cushion up. There must be immediate thing to be done to reduce the hardship, while there's also long-term palliatives that can come. For example, we need to add palliatives in the transport sector. That should be an immediate whatever. RFI tried it, it worked. 2, there must be a way to change or to add to the status of workers. Now we're still at 30,000 minimum pay. Somebody who lives in Yanya, for example, coming to work in Abuja, 30,000 will not be enough for a week.
Now, when you speak about that transport sector, do we really have transport sector? So even if you add whatever subsidy you want to add, what kind of impact will it have?
We'll have transport sector that's inefficient, ineffective, that is not working. I'll give you an example. Transport system only works in Lagos. Even at that, it's not perfect. They have the Lagos buses all over. RFI tried, where are those RFI buses and RFI taxis? If you have, for example, now 10 buses taken off from Gwagwalada into Abuja and another 10 buses taken off from Abuja to Gwagwalada, it will reduce the transport system. How come in UK and US people park their vehicle to enter the train, to enter buses to go to work? Because fuel is the real cost of it. It's not subsidized. So people don't waste it. People don't waste it. So we can have that transport system. Okay, for example, we are now saving how many trillions of naira from subsidy? Can the federal government not make available money for every state to pick those long buses? For example, 100 of such buses per state. The money is there. And then apply the rules. That's why the governors will be involved in the coming together cooperation. For example, it works to be in immediate term, and then workers will now have a subsidized or a permanent way of movement. They don't need to buy fuel anymore. It's biting everybody. But something must be done. Government can do a thing to see that food are evacuated from rural areas outside into urban areas at a minimal cost. So the transport sector must have something to be done.
Well, you seem a bit bullish about some of the reforms, you can decide what you want to call it, that have been introduced so far. The removal of subsidy, you think it's a step in the right direction. What about the floating of the naira? Our earlier guests made a difference, let's say differentiated between depreciation and devaluation. He says what has happened is a depreciation as a result of the floating of the naira, not a devaluation. That devaluation will be a policy statement on the part of government. So for you, and the fact that this is going to have an effect on things that are imported into our country, knowing that we're still largely import dependent, are you still optimistic about the general outlook about how this is going to pan out on the short term to long run?
Whatever name they want to call it, devaluation or depreciation, naira lost value. That is, naira lost value. And what do we do to increase the value of naira? One, we must reduce import and increase export. We must be able to decide what do we want. We must have an open market system where demand and supply will determine. For example, why will you tell somebody not to export food? Because you think we have food? So no, we have sufficient food, but it's the management. So the man who produces yam, for example, may want to earn dollar. So you do policies like to say, if you want to export yam, produce 100 tubers. For every 100 tubers, will allow you to export 20. That will increase the export. The man who farms yam want to earn dollar through export. So what happens now? Our yam and so it's being smuggled to Ghana. Then Ghana will take it to Europe and sell. Because we have policies that are not working. Because we have customs that are not doing what they ought to do. You see? So the only way to increase the value of naira is to increase production.
Have you heard this? You've heard these things in Nigeria, that people are smuggling yams to Ghana and then exporting it from Ghana.
It's not a hidden thing. Our food, because we cannot have it directly to Europe, they'll tell you they don't meet the standard, the texture, and the bottlenecks created by customs. They will take it to Ghana. They will take it to Ivory Coast. They take somewhere from there, they will smuggle to Europe. Our bitter cola is being sold in Ivory Coast. It's big money. From there, it finds its way in Europe because of the ease of doing business here. These are the things we must improve. These are part of the palliatives we'll also create. Ease of doing business. So that people can, you see, double taxation and difficulties, bottlenecks created administratively is giving us headache. So Mr. President should remove to barest minimum part of these things.
A number of things that people remember about the Oransanye report was that it advocated the merging of agencies, because people have talked about how government also needs to cut down on cost of government. And people talked about, you know, why is it that it's been so difficult to implement, to merge agencies? Initially, in the first term of President Buhari, we saw an attempt to do so. But by 2019, when he returned, it was seen that they went back into proliferating these agencies. From your experience, oversighting some of these government agencies, and I'm sure that you must have seen quite a few whose duties overlap, why has it been so difficult to merge agencies of government?
Again, I will put that to the political will. And I pray Mr. President now should be able to have the political will. You see, a lot of duplications that leads to wastage. If you look at it, Buhari told us or had a body language he was going to do it. As soon as he assumed office, of course, plus ill health and the kitchen cabinet and the need to service the boys. They couldn't do it. They even created more. They created more. You know, and also the legislature should also do the needful and recommend and carry it out. But you also see in the House, other committees are also created to look at these agencies. Those agencies are wastage. There are duplications. At times when they come for oversight, you begin to wonder, you call MDA to appear before you in 3 different committees, at times in one single day. They have meetings here by this committee. So those duplications we must merge that. We must merge those agencies and close down some agencies entirely. Some of these agencies ought to be a table in some ministries, ought to be a section in some ministries, ought to be a department in some ministries. So why giving them autonomy of an agency with a DG, with the hood salaries, and so on? It shouldn't be so. It's just like I had argued in police. You have this roadworthy, this traffic, they're all police.
Some of them illegal on the road anyways,
exactly.
According to judgments from 2014 from the courts.
So if efficiency is there, then they need to man their departments.
All right, Ayo has got some questions for you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Well, Honorable, I'm going to ask you Marquez's question, perhaps a little more expanded. So that Oversight report is something almost every government has been told to consider. On the one hand, as a way of cutting the cost of governance. Another leg to that, so I want to ask you how you think that could be done, not just about the political will, but perhaps is there any legislative intervention that you think could have been considered? In the same vein, a good number of people, such as Chief Afe Babalola, have also recommended that, look, why do we have to have resident lawmakers? Why don't we have those, that will just come, do their jobs, and they get sitting allowance and they go? Some also have suggested that, look, why don't we have just one house as opposed to 2 chambers of the National Assembly? Why not have just one chamber of the National Assembly as a way of cutting costs? How do you see any of these things seeing the light of day?
Yes. Let me start from that of legislature. It depends on the system we practice. If you say it's presidential, then we must have 2 chambers. But if we're going to the other way around, so it will be 1. So we must define what we want to be done. We must define what system do we want. 2, I agree that the report laid down things ought to be. The only way it can be achieved is that the government now should subject that paper to discussion, should send it to the parliament to form their own opinion and get us a legislation or resolution from. So parliament may not be able to discuss that if it's not before them. So there must be executive submission on that point, asking for authorization or whatever you call it for them to carry that out. But it should be until that report is carried out, there will be wastage in government. That leakage, that unnecessary wastage and expenditure will continue to pile. So they looked at it properly. If they don't like the name of who did that or that committee, I won't subscribe. They can set up an panel to still review, to bring it to reality of time. If you look at when that report was done and now, you'll agree with me that there's been a lot of changes and so on, but the main issue remains there. So we must dust it up, bring it up, and see how we can implement it. It's doable. I bring that again to the political will to do that. Why do you think they refuse to look at it, various government? It's because it will have sent a lot of people packing, it will have sent a lot of people losing jobs, and so on. So the resistance was great. They were not looking at the benefit. They were looking at self-benefit from
Honorable,
that.
When you say the natural question a number of people will ask was, look, you were also in the 9th House of Representatives, and you're saying that, it's something that has to come from outside of the National Assembly. What is wrong with the National Assembly itself, maybe a committee in the House of Representatives, coming up with the bill and saying, guys, we need to cut the cost of governance. So we need to review this, document and let someone in the House of Representatives, as representatives of the people, champion that cause. Oh, by the way, you haven't answered the question about, as opposed to paying the members of the legislature, the National Assembly, rather than pay them salaries the way we do, give them stipends, sitting allowances, and all of that. If you can quickly take those responses.
Yeah, I would think that would be desirable. If you understand the workings of the parliament as it is now, you see that making it part-time will be less productive because one, it's almost a full day-to-day assignment from plenary to committee works. So if you make it part-time, you will see that the members will also be busy most of the time. Most of the time. That is why it is full-time. From Tuesday to Thursdays, you sit at the plenaries, committee work is every time, oversight is outside, in and out, and so on. So it will be difficult. But if that can be achieved, then that will be good. If it will be achieved, it means that that part-time job will allow members attend to other issues and then get stipends as a sitting allowance and all whatnot as we described. But it will leave a lot of things undone. I assure you, any parliamentarian who wants to do thorough work will not do anything less than 8-10 hours a day. Not to do a thorough work. You must do that. You have to read, you have to research, you have to travel, and so on. So that is it. But I still say that the system we run will determine what we will do.
Right, that's given. But quickly respond to the
federal system of government, but it's unique.
That is understood. Quickly respond to that issue about the oversight report. What's wrong with the National Assembly? Anyone from the Senate or the House of Representatives taking it up?
Fine. Let me tell you at this point that in answer to you, with difference to Reverend to Bajamila, in his legislative agenda, we included that we must trim down government expenditure, that we must trim down the cost of government, that we must match MGAs. In that legislative agenda, which the then Speaker had projected to Nigeria, it was well discussed. But again, we are told that the House resolution is a mere guide. It has no legal effect. So if it comes from them, and then the House will now give it back in, it may be better. So when the House proposed that, closure of one or two things and so on, these people who are involved will lobby the villa, will do a lot of things that they will describe our resolutions as a mere resolutions that conveys nothing. That's what happened. Right. Night Assembly under Jamila tried to shrink governance. Or tried. That I'll give to him. But again, it was described as a mere resolutions that have no effect. The then Attorney General will attorney Nigeria the way he deems fit, not even reference to the law. Okay. How they described us. And none of the media came to the help of the Night Assembly, saying, no, resolution should be serious. I made bold to say one time that the then Night Assembly, at the particular time, we had 116 resolutions. The House didn't obey any. The government then didn't obey any.
But they had the power to override it.
Yes, you have a overriding power if it is a bill, if it's a law that you give them, and then if it's rejected, then a certain percentage of votes will override it. And then it has only been tried once during Obasanjo.
And they did not see it through. No, even for the Night Assembly.
They couldn't.
They had opportunity.
We couldn't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Political will again. Okay. When members are being told, you must do this, if you don't do this, you may not likely return, and so on. So people are careful.
Oh, okay, let's find out.
Only the very radical ones will be able to say, no, we'll go all head along.
We don't know how radical Honorable Dennis Agbo is or will be. He's a member of the 10th Assembly. He's just been elected. Good morning. He joins us next, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Do you feel you have some sort of obligation to monitor or keep an eye on the negotiations that will happen today between government and Labour to ensure that those implementation plans of the meeting go well, such that the fuel subsidy, as the people talk about how they feel the pinch, it's to a very large extent addressed?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. Definitely. Something very significant and important to the welfare and the well-being of the Nigerian people is going to be addressed. So naturally, the interest of the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, is drawn to it, and we will follow up what the outcome is going to be. One, does it reflect the interest of the Nigerian people? And follow up with the implementation of the decision, the agreement, because we are getting too used in this country to agreements being breached or being observed in breach. Now, this particular issue of palliatives to cushion the effect of the oil subsidy becomes very, very important. It is very
high level of corruption in our courts and judiciary. It's more sad that this scandal will be brushed under the carpet as usual. Sad, he says.
Okay, but we do also thank AGK as well as Stephen Nwabwinsi for your comments on Senator Bokochewa. They're both saying they're not going to hold their breath on what will go on. Well, we do thank you all for your messages. Please do keep them coming through. We will see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so have a very good day today.
Well, next time, hopefully, it should be tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Cheers to a great week ahead. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
And please do pray for the federal government and the Labour so that they can have some agreements that will favor everyone. Have a wonderful day and a fruitful week. I'm Ayo Makinde.